Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In the previous sessions, we were talking about software architecture, and then I basically explained the low level architecture deeply. After which I basically started breaking the low-level architecture down and basically explaining the layers of the low-level architecture, starting from the brokers, foundation services. And today I would like to quickly explain the processing services, their purpose, and why we really need them, and basically how a processing service would look like in the code base, right? Let me quickly explain the previous session. The previous video was about foundation services. We already talked that the foundation services they don't contain any heavy logic in them. It's just basically calling a broker, right? Retrieving the data. As you can see here, uh, we have exposure service broker. So basically service under the service, the first service type is a foundation service, which talks to a broker, right? It can be a storage broker, it can be an authentication broker, or it can be, for example, a DocuSign broker if you're implementing your system with the DocuSign, or Stripe if you're doing some payment in your system, right? It can be anything, right? As long as it is an external system, right? So if we want our system to talk to external system, then we create the broker, right? And what actually calls the broker is a foundation service, right? We already discussed that the foundation service needs to be tested, the logic test, the happy path, right? Then the validation, validating the inputs, right? And then the exceptions. For example, this broker may throw exceptions because of the external system. Let's say if external system errors out, right? We are basically going to handle that error here at the foundation level. Uh, I think the foundation service is very straightforward, right? And it's like I would say the easiest service type. And now let's move on to the processing service. I'm gonna go and copy all of these things and paste here. And basically, I'm gonna say that the foundation service. Let me move this foundation service a little bit here, right? So we can add our next service, which is the processing. All right. Let me move a bit more. Okay, I'm gonna copy paste this. Just right in here. And I'm gonna call this a processing service. Processing service, which basically talks to a foundation service. All right, let me mark it as a green. Processing service. Okay. If foundation service talks to a broker, then our processing service is going to talk to a foundation service, right? Yes, the processing service can talk to a broker, but only to a utility broker, which is a login broker, or a datetime broker, right? But the processing service shouldn't talk to a storage broker, for example, right? Because this is the responsibility of the foundation service. Um, all right, the processing service, uh, the processing service is basically a service which performs a heavier business logic in in itself, right? So we don't let the foundation service to take care of everything, right? All our business logic, all complex calculations, but we basically let the processing service to handle it. That's why it's called processing, right? For more complex work. If I would say simply define the processing service, basically a processing service is responsible for handling, like as I said, the business logic, calculations, transformations, filtering, decision makings, and like basically processing the data before returning the real result, right? Or even simpler, if I would compare the foundation service and processing service, I would say that the foundation service, uh, the foundation services retrieve data, while the processing services make decisions with that data. Okay, what I'm going to do with this data? I can filter, right? I can order, I can sort, and like many like these logics, right, are going to happen at the processing service layer. And as I said, the processing service uh needs to be tested, like the methods in the processing service will need to have the logic, right? The validation and exception. The logic is going to be a little bit more complex because the processing service again is going to take care of uh, complex things, complex behaviors, right? But the validation and exceptions mostly stay the same. All right, I think I explained enough regarding the processing services, and now I think we can go uh, and and write some code. I basically uh, will go and create broker foundation, and on top of the foundation service I will show how we basically build this processing service. Let me go to the project. I actually created a POC project, processing service POC, just to show how the processing service looks. I'm gonna go first create a model. Let me go and create a model. uh, I will name this folder as models, and then under the models I want to create a users folder, or let me say students folder, right? And under the students folder, I would like to create a student model. Student model. Okay. And this student model has int ID, right? And it has let's say string name, right? And it has uh int let's say group ID, right? Student belongs to a group, right? So the student uh, has the group ID. Okay, and mm, I would like to perform logic get student by group ID at the processing level, right? Because this is not the uh, task for the foundation service. So our purpose is to get a student by group ID. Okay, which means that I will definitely need to create select all students at the broker level, right? To select all students. Let me actually go and draw a low level architecture for this so it's easier for you to understand. Let's say I'm gonna let's say I'm gonna let's say I wanna have a memory, right? I have a memory and I want to create a memory broker, right? Which basically talks to my memory. So it's gonna be memory broker, right? And this memory broker is going to it's called method, is going to have a method called um name, let's say select all students async, right? So this memory broker has a method which retrieves all students from our memory. And the output is going to be value task, a list of student, right? Okay, all right. And then this memory broker is going to be called by a memory service, which is foundation service, right? Exactly the same uh, job, retrieve all students, right? Nothing complex. The foundation service just calls the broker, right? And on top of this foundation, so since I know that that I need to have a logic to retrieve one student, or let's say to retrieve all students by that group ID, I would need to create a processing service. So this would be called memory, or no, this is not, I made a mistake. So this would be called, uh, let's call it a student memory service, right? And the processing is also going to be called student memory processing service. So it's not memory because it, like before it was named like as memory service, which is too generic and not clear. So what does the memory service do with the student, right? So we make sure that our service is also named properly. All right, and this student memory processing service is going to have an input which is int, right? Int group ID. So basically, this group ID is coming from from the front end, from a client, and the client needs all students like under that group, right? So and the name would also change, retrieve students by group ID, and the output is the same because we may have more than one student, right? Let me adjust the architecture, make sure that everything is balanced. Mhm. So this is the low-level architecture for our logic. It's not complete because we'll need to have a controller, but for today's session, I think we stop at the processing service level. Okay, so, and let me create a model. A model here called student, right? And this student model has an int ID, which is foreign key, let's say, and then it has a string name, right? And oh no, this is a primary key. The ID is the primary key, and the int group ID is a foreign key. All right. Basically, we already created the model, right? So I'm gonna go and create the broker now. I'm going to mark this as a pending with the orange color because I'm still working on it, right? Okay, like this. Let me go back. Okay, we have the model. Let me go and create a folder called brokers. Then under the brokers, I'm gonna go and create memories, right? And this is going to be called memory broker, right? Memory broker. We create an interface for this memory broker as well. So this memory broker is going to have a method. Let me go back to the architecture. We just select all students async, right? I can basically come and copy from here. So it exactly matches the architecture, right? If in one project there are a lot of engineers are working, right? So to make sure that the same, like when when one architecture is being taken care of by many engineers, so it's better like when we uh copy the things like exactly as they are. So because we may make mistakes and then we get comments, right? And our PR is going to take longer to be approved and merged. All right. I'm gonna say that the output is the value task, list of the student. Okay. Let me bring this to, and the name is select all students async. So this method doesn't have any inputs, right? Because this is just the select all. And let me initialize this method here. Second. Okay, implement interface. All right. So since it's a memory broker, I would come here and basically create private uh, a list uh, student, right? And it will be called just students. And when this select all students method is called, I'm just going to go and return this students, simply like this. All right, this is our method. Uh, it just retrieves the students from the memory. Definitely, it may seem a bit strange that we are returning just the empty students, but we are going to have like in the project, it would look like that we have a add student, let's say here insert student method, right? Which would take a student and basically uh, add that student, right? And let me add that student and return this added student. So it would be something like this, right? Let's imagine that we have students in our memory. So we focus on this select all students. So the broker is done. I'm gonna mark this as green, right? And we will start our foundation service. Okay, so I'm gonna go and create a folder for the services, and then basically foundations under the services, and under the foundations, it would be called student memories, right? Student memories, and here I'm gonna create the interface, student memory service and student memory service. So this interface will have a uh, method name is retrieve all students with the same output. So it's basically value task, list of list of the students, and the name is retrieve. Let me copy from the architecture. Retrieve all students async, right? Let me initialize my interface here. All right, we have this not implemented method. I'm gonna do the dependency injection as we did it previously. Memory broker, right? I'm gonna create my constructor. So we're just going to take this memory broker and initialize it, right? So the foundation is going to be very simple. Just return memory broker, select all students. Make it asynchronous. That's all. And we can get rid of this return and extra scopes because it's one line code. So this is our foundation service, right? Very straightforward. We don't have any logic. We don't have any filtering or sorting in here. Just return what the broker gives us. Okay? The foundation service is ready. Now I'm gonna go and create this processing service. All right, let's go and create the processing service. So the processing service is going to be under the processings folder, right? So we have here the foundations folder, and under the services folder, I'm gonna go and create processings folder. All right, and here one more folder for the student memories and the interface and service itself. Student memory processing service. Okay. All right. Okay, let me start from the interface. I need to specify my output, method name, and the input. Let me go back to the architecture. We can see here that the input is group ID, the name is retrieve students by group ID, and the output is value task list of students, right? I'm gonna start from the output. So the value task list student, and then the name, the method name, which is retrieve students by group ID async, and the input is int group ID. The input is int group ID. Okay. All right. As you can see, like exactly how our architecture tells us, like we build the code like looking at our architecture, right? So like having this low level architecture really makes the development faster and easier for the engineers. So let me implement my interface in here. Okay, I have this method. So this processing is going to talk to a foundation service, which means that I need to call this foundation service at my processing in my processing service. It's going to be pretty the same as we did with the foundation service here, right? I'm gonna go and say private read only. It's going to be iStudent memory service, right? I think I can click Control dot to see if I can generate a constructor. Yes, I can. So I have a constructor here, right? Which initializes this student memory service. And in my method, in my implementation, watch what I'm going to do. So since I told that we need to retrieve students by group ID, right? Which is going to require us to do some filtering. We cannot just go and say like this AI suggests us return this student memory service retrieve all students because it doesn't make sense. Why? Because I'm expecting students only for this group ID. So in this case, I'm going to take this like the list of like get all students in one list. I'm gonna call it students. Array this um, memory student memory service and retrieve all students async, right? So now I have all students at my like in my processing service in my method, right? Which means I'm not gonna just go and say return students, right? Again, because it doesn't make sense. I need to filter, right? I can say list of student, and I can say students by group ID, or uh, we can say filtered students, something like this, right? But I would prefer this name students by group ID, right? And then we would say students dot where. So this where method, it's already a high level logic, right? This where shouldn't sit at the foundation level, right? Because under hood it's still doing the looping, it's still doing the heavy logic. Where the student dot uh, group ID is equal up where the student group ID equals the group ID which is coming as an input, right? All right, as you can see, we have students by group ID, and this logic here is the job of the processing service. So we build the processing service which contains this logic, which means this is the correct processing service. We cannot have just the processing service talking to a foundation without any reasons, right? As long as like if we are not just doing the pass-through, but just having a processing service talking to a foundation, it doesn't make sense. So the processing service has to do something. It has to do a logic, right? So where is the logic? Here's the logic. We are doing the filtering. We are getting the students by group ID. And basically when we have these students, we just return these students uh, at this retrieve students by group ID method. As you can see, it doesn't look that complicated. We just make sure that one service doesn't do everything, right? We try our best to follow the solid principles, and as you can see that so far, uh, the processing service doesn't look that complex, even though it takes care of complex logic. But in general, that's all. This is how the processing service looks, and we already implemented it, right? And our law architecture is ready. Pretty simple. Processing service talks to a foundation, handles some heavy logic in it, right? Or does some filtering, and that's all. If we require more complex job, that then we would probably need an orchestration service, for example, to orchestrate two processing services, right? So to make uh, heavier work, to make heavier business logic in it. I think for today that's all. Thank you very much for watching. The next sessions I will try to explain the orchestration services, how it's going to look like, their purpose, how we would build the low-level architecture with like having the orchestration service in it, and definitely we will try uh, coding and basically having some examples in our code base. Thank you very much for your time. Please subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Bye bye. See you next time.